Welcome to Next Step Career Corner, the podcast where real life stories meet real leadership lessons. I'm your host, Stephanie Rank, and today's episode is one I've been looking forward to for a very long time. I'm joined by Angie Callen, career coach, founder of Career Benders, and the powerhouse behind Modern Coach. Angie's journey from engineer to entrepreneur is packed with bold pivots, honest moments, and powerful leadership insights that every woman needs to hear. In this conversation, we deep dive into what it means to lead on your own terms, how to push past imposter syndrome, own your ambition, and create impact without burning out. Angie doesn't just talk about modern leadership, she lives it. And if you're a woman navigating your own rise, her story is going to hit home. So let's get into it. So Angie, welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm so excited.
Thanks for having me, Steph.
Let's get started with your career. So you started in engineering. What pulled you toward the world of career development and coaching?
Well, that's a loaded question because there's a few things in between there that I would say the TLDR of it is coaching is where I was supposed to land and the journey took me there. I knew when I was a junior in college, I didn't want to be an engineer, but when you are a junior at Carnegie Mellon paying for your own education, you don't change your major, unless you want to just, have another $50K in student loans. So I stuck it out. It was the early 2000s. And I'm even in hindsight, I'm glad I did because it helped me find, gainful employment during years where the economy was meh. And there's also a certain level of, I would say, respect people have for the engineering brain and the way that it is trained. And so I think that ended up helping me really form kind of a way of thinking along with a perspective on the world. And that's where I experienced the corporate world. I experienced a lot of the negatives of the corporate world and the challenges, the keeping up with the Joneses, the titles, the demands, the discrimination against a woman working in a male-dominated environment when I'm pretty sure that my, better degree, no offense, and higher skill level still got me paid less, right? So just seeds that got planted early on. And the impetus for making the change was two things. One, I made a transfer from Boston to Colorado, and I was able to do that through the company that I worked for as an engineer. So I always think that was like a little way or a little reason for hanging on. But I moved during the right smack when the Great Recession hit. I started work in the office in Colorado on September 8th of 2008. And so for any of you out there who know, Lehman Brothers crashed like a week later. And what I was supposed to do really never came to fruition. And it really started to kind of open my eyes to the fact that I was now disillusioned, right? I went from being pushed up the ladder quickly because I am a former engineer who loves people, project manager, into, doing CAD drawings for parking lots on national forest land. And I was like, oh, wait, this is not what I kind of bargained for. And so I decided at one point in time to take the leap and went into just a really, I would say, random, unplanned career change exploration that definitely was a very big seed planted for that work that became career coaching.
Right. It's amazing what our stories can do. Mm-hmm. You start out on one path and then because of circumstances, other opportunities come along and you take those chances, right? Mm-hmm. Did you see yourself as a leader early on in your career, or did your leadership evolve over time with your experience?
I have always, I would say, naturally. When I was 16 years old, I was selected as the single delegate. Then, and it's still around, pretty well-known youth leadership seminar called HOBE. It was the Hugh O'Brien Youth Foundation. And it's leadership development for 16-year-olds. And I stayed involved with that organization for years as a junior counselor at events and on alumni boards in both Pennsylvania and Massachusetts because it made such an impact on me at such a young age. And so I would say I've always been this way. And some of that was also fostered to make it even stronger at a really important time in my life in those, teen formative years.
Okay, so now you coach executive leaders and entrepreneurs. So when it comes to your women clients, what are the biggest mindset challenges that you see women facing in leadership roles?
I think I think one definitely has to do with like a generational component of who we see rising into leadership right now is oftentimes younger Gen X and older millennials who have different affinities and characteristics than either older leaders or younger people coming into the workforce. And so I really see women, women have are we biased because we're both women? But women have a greater capacity to lead than they're ever given credit for, because the things that we have as superpowers, empathy, understanding, uh, and communication skills, are often tagged as weaknesses when actual force has of leadership today, right? We know autocratic leadership is being ushered out, or should be ushered out, in exchange for this kind of human-minded. I'm a huge fan of humans, human-minded leadership, and I thought we're still kind of fighting a little bit against the machine and the stigma around kind of female leaders. And one of the things I see that can often happen I experience this as an engineer, and I see this happening with women who are leading in these male dominated environments is either you are, as a woman leader, willing to just absorb what you can, deflect what you can, and set your team up for success, or you fall into a really dangerous trap of trying to posture to quote unquote keep up with the men who are leaders, and then you kind of leave a lot of damage in your wake. And that's a kind of a negative thing that I have seen happening, because we're trying to have a seat at the table and have our voice heard. And so that would be maybe one cautionary tale is don't fall into the trap that is hiding your strengths. Leverage those strengths, because that is what makes female leaders, in my opinion, different and sought after.
And we have personally talked about this a lot, but imposter syndrome, or women feeling pressured to lead like a man. What are your experiences with that, whether personally or through your clients?
And I think that imposter syndrome, by the way, is maybe one thing that brings out that kind of like feeling like I need to lead like a man, but we're not meant to, right? And there's an energy thing, right? You could be you could be a female with feminine energy, or you could be a female with male energy, but that still doesn't mean you're going to lead like the gender man will. And we show up and we have different communication skills. And it's interesting. I was talking to a woman yesterday who has been a CEO at some really, really big companies. And for the last several years, she's actually been working at a PE fund. And the voice inside her head tells her it's going to be hard for me to go back into a C-suite operator role because I've been in a fund for 5 years. Right? We keep ourselves small. We find reasons as women to say, "Ooh, I'm not there yet," where some dude's just going to bulldoze it and say, "Hey, here I am." Where we're having a conversation around self-limiting beliefs, and the imposter that's telling her that isn't the case, or that she isn't going to be able to make this shift, when actually, in my experience, the fund makes her more well-rounded as she goes back into an executive leadership role and potentially fundraising and all those kinds of things. And so I think it's easy. We are really hard on ourselves as women. Society has made it that way. And we hold ourselves to a level of perfectionism that is not healthy or realistic, and actually ends up holding us back, because we're trying to make sure we do something just so, when just doing the thing is better. And I think that comes into play when we're trying to grow careers, or move up ranks, or take on more responsibility. We look at it as females of like, well, wait, I haven't done that yet, I can't do it. Whereas even statistically speaking, a man will go apply for a job they're less than 50% qualified for. Oh, Steph, you're muted.
Thank you. My dogs are barking. We also limit ourselves just based on our stage as a woman. So I'm in that I have children that are school age. And something that happened recently in the last year is that I was taking on all the homework assignments, piano lessons, the reviewing, all of it, because I love school. It wasn't an expectation from my husband. I just love school that much that I'm like, yes, I'll help you. And it stressed me out. And so something recently is, hey, hubby, I am not doing this every day. You have to review some of this homework yourself. And so
Mhm.
that came up. I have clients that are taking care of parents. And while I've had male clients that have taken time off, it's usually females that take that break and then they're re-entering the workforce, and they could have been C-suite VP level, and they think they have to start back at the manager level or even a director level, and then they
Mhm.
still worry about their qualifications. So there's also societal expectations, our
Yep.
own expectations, because we want to be everything. The women I surround myself, we're superstars, we're going to do everything. It's and then we fall into these traps of, oh well, now this is what's going on now, I have to focus on this, or and then so when it comes to our career we just limit ourselves,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then the imposter syndrome sets in. Whew, like we do it to ourselves, and then it doesn't help that society, especially right now in this year. I mean, we are it's tennis when it comes to back and forth. We're supporting women, we're not supporting women, we're taking into work-life balance or family time, and who knows where we're going to be in the next 6 months when it comes to
Yeah.
that.
It feels a lot like, well, and we're just going to go there. Unfortunately, the last 6 to 8 years of American society have not helped all the gains women have made to that end. If anything, I feel like there is a push to put us back barefoot in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really unfair thing to do simply because of a gender, and simply assuming that we are less than or less capable because of a gender is never anything that I've bought into. I don't ever even think that seed was like, I don't ever think that was part of my thinking. It was just, I'm Angie, I have strengths, I'm going to go do things. Right? I was never really raised or conditioned to think that I couldn't do as much because I was a woman instead of a man. But unfortunately, the conditioning of society over generations and generations and generations has really brought this, I would say, perfect storm of, we do hold ourselves to this ridiculous standard. And even though statistically more women are working now than ever had, and there's I mean there's stats on like the breadwinners, right? And like, if you look at companies led by women, the success rates are higher, right? There's all kinds of data to kind of back up this idea that putting women back in the kitchen and barefoot baking bread isn't necessarily going to be the way to go. But the problem I think we have is we live in a time and place where old and new are still converging and fighting each other. And so we're still fighting against the war era female role was to stay home and raise kids while men were out kind of fighting. And unfortunately, even though now we're in an ecosystem where both parents work, those home roles haven't substantially changed if we look at society kind of as a whole. My house is total role reversal. We are free range adults with no kids. However, I basically joke, and Jim would completely tell you that he's a house husband. He does work, but he works less than me and makes less of our money. And in exchange has said, okay, I'm going to make sure like you're fed and watered and the dog is exercised and the cat got a walk around the block this morning. And what I love about that is he's not threatened by that. And I think if we want to change the status quo, men are going to have to get on board with empowering and enabling us instead of being threatened by us.
Exactly. And in some ways we're similar. My husband is the breadwinner, but when it comes to my business, he's all in, right? If I need to put in hours, if I need money, it hasn't been the case in the last few years, but that's how I started. And it's the battle of, well, like he cooks, right? I don't cook, he cooks. I will make meals, but he's the one that enjoys it, does it. I mean, it is true. It's true. But we do put ourselves to these ridiculous standards. My goal is to make as much as he does one day. I mean, I don't know why, but I've always been less. And some of that has been self-limiting on my part. And some of that is just circumstances, right? Women
Yeah,
make
why
less.
not?
Why not? Right? Why not? But yeah, society, and I know women that have chosen to stay home, and I think that's great. If you have the financial stability to do that,
Yep.
great, good for you. I'm not saying you're a bad person. What hurts is when I find them 15 years later, the kids are in high school or even in college, and then they have to go back to work and they don't know what to do. Or worse, they're, towards retirement age and they're getting divorced. And because they've always been the stay-at-home mom, what do they do now? And they're only qualified for these less than $15 an hour role. And so I have always told women, do something, volunteer, have a 1 day role somewhere a week, do something just to keep your skills going. There's a lot you can do to keep going, even if you don't have a career goal or you don't have aspirations to be a working person, but you don't want to limit yourself so much that you're unqualified for anything.
And
Right?
I'll add a psychological piece to all of this. And then I recognize that this is easy for me to say as a woman who has never gone through the identity crisis that comes from being mom and those who choose that as their primary job. I mean, let's be honest, being a mom is a job. I grew up in a house with a stay-at-home mom, and but what's interesting about my mom is she didn't attach her identity to us. And I see that happening with a lot of women, right? And so all of a sudden their kids are turning into older teenagers who quote unquote don't need them anymore. And then they leave the house. And all of a sudden there's a shell of a woman left because she has no meaning and no identity because it was all channeled towards children. And that's where I think if you choose the role of full-time stay-at-home parent, make sure it's diversified enough so that you have choice and identity beyond the children who are the subject of the work.
Right. And let me circle back to how you were raised, where you never even thought about your identity, like you could do anything. I was raised in a military household. My dad was in the military. I have a lot of respect because of his experience, the things we went through, things like that. But it was very much a male woman. My mom was a teacher, but she was a teacher, one, because she loved it, but two, so she could be home with us after school.
It's a mom-friendly job.
It's a mom-friendly job. The messaging, though, that I received throughout my teen years and into my 20s were that women were not good managers. And in my 30s, I finally confronted it because I was a team lead. And then later I started my business. My sister became a team lead. And this messaging, and it was stories. It wasn't like, oh, women are bad leaders. They never said it word for word, but the stories they told were that women could not be good leaders. And in my 30s, I finally confronted it. I'm like, and when it sunk in, that was the messaging we were receiving, there was a lot of backpedaling, because how do you support your daughters in their careers when all their life you've told these stories about how women are bad leaders? And so there was also that moment where I'm like, well, I am a good leader. I'm a very good leader. But I had to deal with how I was raised because it was that old school mentality.
And that to me that gets into something I actually talk quite a lot about is our belief system. And I think if, we're focusing on all of the women out there, I think that we have a harder time challenging the belief system that we were given. And that is a very specific word. We were given a belief system sometime between the ages of 5 and 9, which became super rooted in who we are and how we see the world. And most people in society, and I would bet you women are a high percentage of the people who don't ever stop and go back and say, wait, does this belief system serve me and what I now know of myself and what I value and how society has changed? And that's a perfect example of one where it's very easy to just allow that stuff to kind of like basically condition you into a level of thinking that is is maybe it was true at the time, but is it true to you right now? And that's one of the biggest things that I feel like giving permission to women to do that, especially those of us who are in like I'm in my mid 40s. So I was raised by baby boomer parents, but somehow meant to like told I could be anything. I don't know. It was a very interesting, very ironic conundrum there, but it's really, really typical of people raised by baby boomer parents to have that kind of really structured, they were raised by the silent generation who was post-war, right? There's all kinds of stuff that generationally, does seat itself as these belief systems. And the best thing that we can do is sit down and take stock of what's working for us and what isn't.
Right. Right. Yeah. The belief systems are super huge. I remember I always wanted to go to college. I always wanted to be something, and my parents encouraged that. And then my son was born, and the circumstances where I lived in Boston, I had no family around me. And I lived in a neighborhood that was very industrial. And, I was walking by office buildings, right? So it wasn't family friendly per se. I was ready to go back to work. The amount of crap that I received because I wanted to go back to work. Then I moved. I came home to Idaho, and I live in this neighborhood, and I met a lot of moms in the neighborhood, and I was so excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, women my age, women with kids, this is awesome. Like, I was just excited to be in that group. And I got lectured that my son was 3 at the time. These were the prime years of his life. I should be home. And I had him in a very good preschool. I was the one that took him. I was the one that picked him up because I was the closest. I spent all my time with him. I felt really good about my decisions. I really don't have close relationships with anybody in my neighborhood because that was the initial reaction. And I was shocked. I was early 30s. Like, what in the world is this? So it can also be where you live and
yes,
because in Boston, I was 26 when I got married. So when I arrived, people were like, "Oh my gosh,
you're married?"
Yeah, they were like, "You're supposed to be in your 30s when you get married, and upper 30s when you have kids because you went to school, you got a job, you had a career, then you got married." And I loved it. I felt so empowered, even though I was a baby in their view. They were like, "Oh, this is cool!" Like everybody was the same. And there was a lot of culture mixes, and I mean, it was just amazing. I love Boston, would go back. And when I came home to Idaho, which is very traditional, kids are getting married 18, 19 right out of high school, or they go to college to like meet people and get married. And I'm like, what? And fast forward, gosh, we've been home 7, 8 years. My son is 11 now. He's well adjusted. Trust me, there is nothing wrong with working.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. If you aren't, you're not your best self. If you're right, like you're not going to be the best mom if you're also not fulfilling enough. Just because you have a time availability doesn't actually mean you are completely present, especially if it is draining you and you're not going and doing the things that fulfill you, right? Being there 3 meaningful hours a day between school and sleep is, in my opinion, better than all day, every day pissed off because you're not actually going out and doing, you're resentful, right?
Right. So it's circling back. We have to look at it like, look, women are multifaceted. We have many, many priorities. Thankfully, I'm not taking care of aging parents yet, but it's coming. It's coming. So it's just an understanding. And on the flip side, men are taking more of that domestic role, right? Not everybody, not everyone does. But there are more and more men that see that. And so we have to come at it together. Everybody should be supported when it comes to career growth. Everybody should have the same amount of resources and mentors, and not get, oh, you're this type of person, or you're this gender, or you're from this culture. Everybody has the potential. And so our generation, we're able to teach our kids it's a flat playing field. And I get people have circumstances, right? If there's all these statistics on if you come from a divorced family or poverty level or anything like that, but you can make it if you're resilient and you challenge yourself. I have clients that just, they give up, or men and women, they give up, they don't care. But if you have goals and you make them micro goals and go for it one step
Yeah.
at a time, you can do this. You can break barriers, you can break society thought processes, and you can break your belief systems that you're taught and become something, right?
And to me, I feel that the most important person, the last person that you want to disappoint on this earth is yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I love that you called this modern leadership, because it's really what we're talking about, right? Is ushering in this new um ecosystem from like from a societal standpoint of what it means to lead, and almost detaching gender from it and allowing everyone to leverage their strengths and work towards the goals that are really, really meaningful to them. Because the last thing that you want to do is look back and go, man, I'd have been way more fulfilled if I would have done these two things instead of the one thing that was handed to me, or, whatever the thing is. You can always go back to a status quo, but you can't ever lean in and explore this little inkling that you have. And I think that we as women are really good at silencing those little inklings, right? We have extremely strong intuition, and we don't want to listen to it because it would create the challenge, right? It would create imperfection. It would have us questioning belief systems that we've accepted. It might make us imperfect, right?
Right.
But to me, there is no such thing, right?
Right.
Life on your terms is my whole, that's my whole shtick, is life on your terms. Here's the big news flash. You have to figure out your terms. And that's where a lot of us fall short, men and women.
Men and women. It's true. It is true. There's just so many aspects that we have to consider when it's how we're raised. When you went to college, what did you study? Things like that. I mean, it all matters. How you're shaped in your career, what opportunities you're given. The other thing is we need to voice what we want. Have you talked to your manager about what you want? Right?
No one else
One
is
thing,
going to advocate for you in your career. No one,
no
no,
one.
even you could work for your best friend, people. No one is going to advocate for your goals in your career. Sure, they may say, "Hey, this person had great performance this cycle." But nobody's going to stand up in front of the people that matter and the decision makers and say, "Hey, employee number 792 wants this goal and we should give it to him."
Right. Right. It has always been a pet peeve that, business degrees don't have a how to be a manager course. Like, how to be a manager. There are no courses out there. So someone please make one. How to be a manager, how to be a people leader, right? You have to ask your boss to find mentorship, right? Maybe they mentor you. Maybe you love your boss so much you want to be just like them. Or maybe there's someone out there in your organization that you can mentor. Being the individual contributor and doing the work, the subject matter expert, that's one thing. Managing people, completely different animal.
Yep.
For me, delegating was the hardest. I'm going through that right now. I have a leadership role at the Professional Association of Resume Writers and Career Coaches. And you know it, Angie, I'm trying to not do all the little
All the things.
tasks when I have a team that can do that are capable of doing that. So delegating is hard. Not being the person in the weeds is hard. Handling people, how to manage people. And so you have to advocate for yourself. You have to take training. You have to get a mentor. You have to ask. For men and women, you have to ask and show that interest. No one is just going to, oh, you should do this.
Especially if you're in the rising leader category. I think that you will be better served by just making the blanket assumption that your company is not going to upskill you and teach you how to lead and manage, because the two are different. And I attest that you do need to do both in different proportions, depending on the situation and who you're leading and managing. But most and the majority of companies do not have good training in place to take individual contributors into that leadership skill set. And most people who are making that transition don't have the natural skills to figure it out on their own. And that's where here's our commercial. That's where people like us can come in and help. I experienced that as an engineer. People did not know what to do with me. Right. I am an extroverted natural leader working for a bunch of personalities like a brown paper bag. My speed of implementation was off the charts. And so they'd give me work and 3 hours later I'd be bored. But I didn't feel like I had an open door to walk into and say, hey, I'm bored. Can you give me more work? Because the engineer type knows how to do the work. And that's exactly where the delegation problem comes in. And that's why micromanagement is still such a thing, because people who are rising those ranks tend to gravitate towards and grasp onto what's comfortable. And if you're an individual contributor moving into management, what's comfortable is the work, not the people. And so you grab a little harder onto the work because it makes you feel like some level of control and familiarity is there, but the people don't love that and you're not empowering or giving them autonomy. And that's definitely something to watch out for. And again, where that idea of seeking out the training, getting a third perspective, finding mentorship in a company can be huge, because most systems aren't set up to support your success as you climb those middle, icky, sticky levels.
Right. And, there are people out there that love individual contributor roles, stick to it. There's some that like the middle management roles because they're in the middle of it, but they don't have to deal with the politics so much. And then some just thrive at being at that C-suite level, right? It's okay. Pick your goal, go for it, right? But you have to advocate for yourself. You have to say something, right? Well, Angie, this has been amazing. I stopped asking you questions like 2 minutes into this, so this is great. Love the conversation. So where can folks find you?
So if you're watching here on LinkedIn, hop over and follow me. I mouth off daily. And if you want to find out more about the career coaching side of what I do, that's careerbenders.com. But as Steph alluded to early on, and we didn't really get into too much, I have an entire arm of the business dedicated towards entrepreneurs and helping coaches do a lot of what we talked about, right? Really lean into their strengths, figure out exactly who they want to help and how they want to help them. And you can find more about that at themoderncoach.co.
And both branches of your business are amazing. I've known Angie I was trying to remember, 21, 22, we met, but I have been a student of yours. I've been a peer of yours, and she's amazing. She can make results. You just got to do it. You got to follow the action plans that you make.
Yeah.
Go for the goals.
Yeah. Don't discount the power of follow up and follow through.
Exactly. Well, I hope today's conversation with Angie Callen sparked something in you, whether it's a reminder that your voice matters, a nudge to stop playing small, or permission to lead in a way that feels true to you. Angie's story is proof that leadership isn't one size fits all. It's bold, it's evolving, and when women step into it authentically, we make room for others to rise too. If you found value in this episode, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. And be sure to check out Career Benders and Modern Coach for more of Angie's incredible work. Until next time, lead with purpose, trust your instincts, and keep taking the next steps. Have a great day, everybody.